video, I'm going to describe the Identifying Important Science Ideas practice in the context of the Tracing Carbon Through the Arctic Food Web data puzzle. The goal here is to identify important science ideas introduced in an interactive reading called the puzzle plot. And so this is, again, embedded in a student worksheet. You'll pass out the student worksheet and use the student worksheet, facilitate whole class discussions, among other things, to connect science ideas from the reading back to the opening scenario. To summarize these key ideas by having students create an annotated sketch, which functions as their de facto initial model. And for students to identify the investigative questions scientists are seeking to answer and make a prediction about that investigative question. So teachers have used a couple of different facilitation strategies for this part. One, to read the puzzle plot text aloud as a whole class, pausing to watch the videos and discuss graphics together. Or to have students work in small groups or independently read the text and watch the videos. We also encourage teachers, if you have and utilize close reading strategies already in your classroom, to use those as part of this practice here. As students, this is a slide directly from the slide deck for this resource. As students are reading the text, we're going to challenge them to circle the investigative questions scientists are seeking to answer, and then to underline similarities between the reading and the opening scenario that they engaged with in the previous practice, and to be ready to discuss those similarities. Again, like I said, embedded in this interactive reading are a couple of different videos to try to bring the text to life and allow students to see how these data were collected, and to look at visuals, again, to help them kind of make sense of the words on the page. We have a couple of different prompts embedded in this slide deck to help students make the connection between the science investigation presented in the puzzle plot text, that interactive reading, and the ideas that were elicited in the Eliciting Students Ideas practice, part 1. And so asking students to think, after they've read that text, to think about what can measuring the amount and type of carbon-based fats in Arctic organisms tell scientists about what they're eating. And so again, from the interactive reading, these scientists are tracing the carbon-based fats produced by ocean algae and sea ice algae through the Arctic food web to figure out which organisms are more dependent on a food chain that starts with sea ice algae, which organisms are more dependent on a food chain that starts with ocean algae. After kind of synthesizing the puzzle plot text, again, through that prompt, we're going to have students think about that opening scenario and where that might fit in, and ask students to think like, if a doctor could study the different kinds of fats contained within them and predict what they might be eating by looking at those fats. So in all of the foods we eat, there are different types of fats, and certain foods have more of a certain type of fat. So maybe you could, do a back-end calculation by looking at your body and the different types of fats. What kind of foods might you be eating? And so again, trying to make similarities between you are what you eat in the context of us as humans, and think about our experience, to you are what you eat in the Arctic, and how we can use that to trace the flow of carbon-based fats through the Arctic food web. After facilitating that discussion, it's time for students to summarize these important science ideas by responding to a couple prompts on their student worksheet. So the first thing they're going to have to do is create a food chain to show the flow of energy through the Arctic ecosystem. They're going to record the investigative question that they should have circled in the text, and then make a prediction about that investigative question. So I'm going to stop right now and go to the student worksheet so we can see what that looks like and look at those questions. So here is the puzzle plot text for the Tracing Carbon Through the Arctic food web. You can see there are a couple of different videos, some graphics to discuss, a key figure here looking at sea ice algae versus ocean algae. Again, these two plants of the Arctic that make up the base of the food web and make different types of carbon-based fats. A graphic that with some different prompts to help students understand how these different types of carbon-based fats from ocean algae and sea ice algae might move through a food chain. Another video, and then here are the questions 1, 2, 3 as part of the Identifying Important Science Ideas practice, asking students to make a food chain that starts with sea ice algae using the food web that's in the interactive puzzle plot text above. To record the investigative question and then make a prediction about that investigative question. Students will explore and evaluate their prediction by analyzing a data set as part of part 3, supporting ongoing changes in thinking.